The stars glimmered against the vast darkness of space as the UES Phoenix drifted silently through the void. Captain Jia Kim's reflection stared back at her from the bridge's view screen, her face illuminated by the soft blue glow of holographic displays. She watched the enemy signatures multiply across the tactical map, one by one, then dozens, then hundreds of Imperial warships emerging from hyperspace. Behind her, Commander Han Park's fingers moved rapidly across his console. "Captain, I'm counting over 2,000 Imperial ships now. More are still arriving." His voice remained steady, but his shoulders tensed as he worked. 3 months. It had been only 3 months since Earth fell to the Empire's massive invasion force. Jia could still see the burning cities, hear the screams of civilians as Imperial bombers turned humanity's homeworld into ash and rubble. The Phoenix had been undergoing final trials in the Kuiper Belt when the attack came. They could only watch helplessly as Earth's defenses crumbled. Now they carried humanity's last hope. 5,000 survivors crammed into every available space aboard the ship. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, and civilians, all that remained of the resistance against Imperial rule. "Status report," Jia ordered, straightening her navy blue uniform. She had to stay focused, stay strong for her crew. "Engineering reports all systems at optimal levels." Lieutenant Yuna Cho responded from her station. "The experimental shield modifications are holding steady. Life support is strained, but managing with our extra passengers." Jia nodded. The Phoenix was humanity's most advanced vessel, but it was never meant to carry so many people. They had converted cargo bays into makeshift living quarters, rationed supplies carefully, and somehow kept everyone alive during their 3 months of running and hiding. Through the main viewport, she could see the Imperial ships now. Massive angular vessels of black metal and purple energy fields. Their distinctive arrowhead shapes filled the stars like a swarm of deadly insects. At their center loomed the Imperial flagship, 3 times larger than its escorts. "Message incoming from the Imperial flagship," Commander Park announced. "Grand Marshal Rin requests our immediate surrender." A hollow laugh escaped Jia's throat. Of course he did. The Empire always demanded surrender before destruction. It was part of their twisted sense of honor. "Put him through," she ordered. Main screen. The view screen flickered, revealing Grand Marshal Rin's imposing figure. His gray-skinned face was decorated with the ceremonial scars of Imperial nobility, and his black uniform gleamed with medals and honors. "Captain Kim," he said, his translator converting his native clicks and whistles into English. "Your resistance has been impressive, but it ends here. Surrender your vessel, and your refugees will be treated humanely. Continue this futile chase, and I will be forced to destroy you all." Jia met his gaze steadily. "You destroyed our world, murdered billions of our people, and expect us to trust your mercy? I don't think so, Marshal. Your species' stubborn pride will be your downfall," Rin replied. "We offered Earth a place in the Empire. Prosperity, protection, advancement. Your leaders chose war instead. Now look where it has led you." "We chose freedom," Jia shot back. "Something your empire has never understood. Freedom is an illusion. Order is eternal." Rin's expression hardened. "You have 10 minutes to power down your systems and prepare for boarding. After that, we will open fire. Choose wisely, Captain." The transmission cut off. Jia turned to her bridge crew. They were young, too young for such a burden. But they were the best Earth had to offer. Options. Lieutenant Cho spoke up first. "The Kuiper Belt is less than 6 light minutes away. We might be able to lose them in the debris field." "They'll just track us again," Commander Park countered. "We need something more permanent." "What about the experimental weapon?" suggested Ensign Lee from the science station. "Dr. Yoon says the prototype is ready for testing." Jia considered their choices. The weapon was incredibly risky. It might destroy them along with the Imperial fleet, but they were running out of alternatives. She opened the ship-wide comm. "All hands, this is the captain. In 8 minutes, the Imperial fleet will open fire. We carry the last free humans in the galaxy. I won't surrender them to slavery or death." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Each of you joined this crew knowing the risks. Now I'm asking you to take one more. Battle stations. Prepare for emergency maneuvers." The bridge erupted into activity as her crew responded. Warning klaxons sounded throughout the ship as personnel rushed to their posts. Through it all, Jaya watched the Imperial fleet growing larger on her displays. 5 minutes until they opened fire, Park reported. Jaya settled into her command chair, fingers tightening on the armrests. Everything they had sacrificed, everyone they had lost. It all came down to this moment. One ship against an empire. "Plot a course directly for the Imperial flagship," she ordered. "Full power to forward shields. Ready all weapons." Her crew stared at her in shock, but quickly complied. The Phoenix's engines hummed to life, turning the massive ship to face its enemies. "Captain," Commander Park said quietly, "that's suicide." Jaya allowed herself a small smile. "Maybe, but they'll never expect it. And sometimes, Commander, the only way to win is to do the impossible." The Phoenix accelerated forward, its powerful engines pushing it toward the heart of the Imperial fleet. On the tactical display, enemy ships began moving to intercept. 3 minutes until they opened fire. Time enough to show the Empire that humanity wouldn't go quietly into the night. Time enough to make history, or die trying. The battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. The blaring of battle stations echoed through the research bay as Chief Engineer Sun Li bent over her workstation, surrounded by holographic displays showing complex wave patterns. Around her, her engineering team worked with focused intensity, each knowing these next moments could determine humanity's survival. "Run the simulation again," Sun ordered, brushing strands of black hair from her face. "Increase the resonance frequency by 0.03%. Her second-in-command, Dr. Min, adjusted the parameters. The holographic display shifted, showing waves of energy rippling through a simulated Imperial shield. For a moment, the shield flickered, then stabilized. "Still not enough," Sun muttered. She'd spent months studying the debris they'd collected from destroyed Imperial ships, piecing together the secrets of their technology. The Empire's obsession with standardization had finally revealed a weakness, but exploiting it wouldn't be easy. The ship shuddered as the first Imperial warning shots passed nearby. Sun grabbed her console to steady herself. Through the bay's small viewport, she could see the massive Imperial fleet arrayed against them, their purple shield barriers glowing ominously in the starlight. "Chief," one of her junior engineers called out, "Captain Kim is asking for a status update on the resonance device." Sun glanced at the experimental weapon they'd constructed. It sat in a reinforced chamber, looking deceptively simple, a sphere of gleaming metal surrounded by focusing arrays. They'd built it using salvaged Imperial technology combined with human innovation, hoping to create something the Empire had never imagined possible. "Tell her we're still calibrating," Sun replied. "We need more time." "Time is something we don't have," Dr. Min said quietly. He pulled up another display showing the enemy fleet's positions. "Their ships are moving to surround us." Sun closed her eyes for a moment, thinking. The Empire's shield technology was incredibly advanced, but it had one critical flaw. Every ship used exactly the same frequencies, the same modulation patterns. It was part of their philosophy that perfection, once achieved, should be replicated precisely. "What if we're thinking about this wrong?" she said suddenly. "We've been trying to overpower their shields directly. But what if we could use their own standardization against them?" Her team looked at her questioningly as she rushed to a different console. Her fingers flew across the controls as she pulled up data from their previous experiments. "Look here," she pointed to a particular reading. "When we hit their shields with the resonance beam, it creates a harmonic feedback pattern. We thought it was just interference, but what if?" Dr. Min's eyes widened as he understood. If all their shields operate on the same frequency, then the feedback wouldn't just affect one ship. Sun finished. It would cascade through their entire network. The engineering team gathered around her console as she began adjusting the device's settings. Another impact rocked the ship, harder this time. "Bridge to engineering." Captain Kim's voice came over the comm. "We're about to be in range of their main weapons. Please tell me you have something." Sun took a deep breath. "Captain, I think we found a way. But it's risky. If my calculations are wrong, the feedback could just as easily destroy us." There was a pause before Kim responded. "How sure are you about this?" 80%. Sun looked at her team. "Maybe 75. We haven't had time to run full simulations." "That will have to be enough," Kim said. "What do you need?" Sun pulled up a tactical display. "We need to get close. Really close. The resonance effect weakens with distance, and we need their shields to be at full power when we hit them." "I can arrange that," Kim replied grimly. "How long to get the device ready?" Sun looked at the experimental weapon. 10 minutes to make the modifications. After that, we'll only get one shot at this." "Make it 5 minutes," Kim ordered. "That's all the time I can give you." The engineering team sprang into action. Sun directed them with rapid-fire commands, every second precious as they modified the resonance device. They'd originally designed it to disable a single ship's shields. Now they were turning it into something that could potentially affect thousands of vessels simultaneously. Through the viewport, Sun could see Imperial ships moving into attack positions. Their enormous forms blotted out the stars, weapons ports glowing with charged energy. The Phoenix was badly outnumbered, but they had something the Empire didn't expect: human ingenuity and the willingness to take chances. "Power coupling modified," Dr. Min reported. "Frequency modulators realigned." Sun checked the readings. The device was drawing massive power from the ship's engines, more than they'd ever tested before. But it had to work. They had no other choice. "Bridge, this is engineering," Sun called. "The resonance device is ready. But Captain, once we activate it, we won't be able to stop the cascade. Whatever happens, happens." "Understood," Kim replied. "All hands, brace for impact. We're going to give the Empire a demonstration of human engineering they'll never forget." Sun looked around at her team. Humans from different nations, backgrounds, specialties, all working together in humanity's darkest hour. The Empire prided itself on uniformity and standardization. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was its diversity, its ability to think differently and take risks. "Initiating power-up sequence," she announced. The resonance device hummed to life, its focusing arrays beginning to spin. On her displays, energy readings climbed steadily toward the critical threshold. The Empire thought they had won when they conquered Earth. They thought humanity would submit to their perfect order, their rigid standards. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. Sun Li smiled grimly as she prepared to activate the device. Sometimes, the greatest victories came not from overwhelming force, but from finding the one small flaw in an enemy's strength and having the courage to exploit it. The battle for humanity's future was about to begin. Lieutenant Da Kim's hands moved gracefully across the navigation controls as he guided the Phoenix through another impossibly tight turn between two massive asteroids. Behind them, 3 Imperial cruisers attempted to follow the same path. One clipped its wing on the rocky surface, sending it spinning away from the formation. "That's 4 they've lost to the asteroids now," he reported, allowing himself a small smile. Every Imperial ship that damaged itself trying to follow them was one less they'd have to face later. The Antares asteroid field stretched out before them like a deadly maze. Massive rocks, some the size of small moons, drifted in complex patterns. Most pilots would consider flying through here suicide. Day saw it as a dance floor. More ships entering the field. Commander Park announced from Tactical. "They're trying to cut us off at coordinates 227 Mark 184. Captain Kim studied the tactical display. "Can you get us through that section, Lieutenant?" "Yes, Mom." Dodd was already plotting the course in his head. There's a series of smaller asteroids we can use for cover. They won't be able to get their larger ships through there." The Phoenix responded instantly to his commands, diving beneath a tumbling rock face. He'd spent years studying celestial mechanics, learning how objects moved in space. Now those lessons were keeping them alive. "Shield data is coming in clearly," reported Dr. Yoon from the science station. "The asteroids are forcing them to constantly adjust their shield harmonics. Each adjustment gives us more information about their systems." That was the real purpose of this elaborate dance through the asteroid field. While the Imperial fleet thought they were simply chasing their prey, each maneuver was carefully calculated to force them to reveal more about their shield technology. A massive explosion lit up space behind them as another Imperial ship miscalculated its course. The Empire's rigid training protocols were working against them here. Their pilots were taught to follow exact procedures, precise patterns. The chaos of the asteroid field demanded improvisation, something they struggled with. "Incoming fire," Park warned. 3 light cruisers, portside. Day didn't even need to look at his displays. He rolled the Phoenix in a spiral around a spinning asteroid, using its bulk to absorb the enemy fire. The massive ship responded like a fighter under his touch, defying its size. "Lieutenant," Captain Kim said quietly. "That was impressive." "Thank you, ma'am." Da kept his focus on his controls, but pride warmed his chest. He'd been the youngest graduate of the Space Navigation Academy before the invasion. Now he was humanity's last hope of outmaneuvering the Imperial fleet. The tactical display showed more enemy ships entering the field. They were learning, spreading out to try to trap the Phoenix. But that was exactly what they wanted. "New course plotted," Day announced, "taking us deeper into the field. There's a cluster of uranium-rich asteroids ahead that should interfere with their sensors." The Phoenix dove forward, weaving between rocks with barely meters to spare. Behind them, the Imperial fleet spread out like a net, trying to anticipate where they would emerge. "Their shield frequencies are shifting again," Dr. Yoon reported excitedly. "The radiation from the asteroids is forcing them to compensate. Each ship is responding identically, just as we predicted." Day allowed himself a brief glance at the science readings. The Empire's standardization meant every ship adjusted its shields in exactly the same way when faced with similar conditions. It was efficient, but predictable. Another series of explosions lit up space as Imperial ships collided with asteroids or each other, their rigid formation breaking down in the chaos of the field. The Phoenix's superior maneuverability was making them look foolish. "Grand Marshal Rin is transmitting again," Park reported. "He's ordering his ships to withdraw from the field and set up a blockade." "Perfect," Captain Kim smiled. "They're doing exactly what we need. Lieutenant, take us toward that large cluster at bearing 042 Mark 156. Let's give them something to chase." Day saw the pattern she wanted and adjusted their course. The Phoenix shot forward, purposefully letting the Imperial ships catch glimpses of them between the asteroids. Like a dancer leading their partner, they were guiding the enemy exactly where they wanted them. The ship shuddered as a lucky shot grazed their shields. Da compensated instantly, using the impact to spin them around an asteroid in a maneuver that looked like they'd been hit harder than they actually were. "They're falling for it," Park reported. "The entire fleet is moving to surround that sector. They think we're damaged." Da's fingers danced across his controls, making minute adjustments to their course. Every move was calculated to look random while actually following a precise pattern, leading the Imperial fleet deeper into position for the trap they were planning. "Engineering reports the resonance device is fully calibrated," Captain Kim announced. "We just need to get them all in position with their shields at full power." Day nodded, already plotting their final approach. The dance was nearly over. Soon, they would show the Empire that sometimes the best way to defeat a superior force was not through strength, but through elegance and precision. "One more pass through the dense section," he said. "Then we'll have them exactly where we want them." The Phoenix soared through the asteroid field, a lone ship leading an empire to its doom. In the darkness of space, among the endless dance of rocks and stars, humanity's fate rested in the hands of a young navigator who had turned running away into an art form. The real battle was about to begin. But first, they had one last dance to complete. Grand Marshal Rin stood on the command deck of the Eternal Glory, his clawed hands clenched behind his back as he watched the human vessel dart between asteroids. The massive viewscreen showed the Phoenix executing another impossible maneuver, slipping through a gap barely wider than its hull. "Unacceptable," he growled, his translator converting the sound into harsh basic. "How does one ship continue to evade the might of the Imperial fleet?" Admiral Toll, his second in command, approached cautiously. "Sir, we've lost 12 ships to asteroid collisions. Our formations are breaking down trying to follow them through the field." Rin's facial scales darkened with rage. For 3 months, this single human vessel had made the Imperial fleet look foolish. His superiors on the Imperial Council were growing impatient. Some had even suggested he was unfit for command. "Send in the heavy cruisers," he ordered. "I want that ship destroyed, no matter the cost." "But sir," the debris field. "Do you question my orders, Admiral?" Rin turned his fierce gaze on his subordinate. "The Empire does not accept failure. Neither do I." On the tactical display, more Imperial ships moved into the asteroid field. Their massive forms dwarfed the rocks around them, pushing smaller asteroids aside with their shield barriers. "The human ship is heading toward Sector 7, a sensor operator reported. They appear to be having difficulty maintaining power to their shields." Rin's eyes narrowed. Something felt wrong about this. The Phoenix's maneuvers, while seemingly random, had a pattern to them, like they were leading the fleet somewhere specific. "Sir," Admiral Toll interrupted his thoughts, "we're receiving damage reports from the heavy cruisers. The asteroid density is too high for ships of that size." Another explosion lit up the display as an Imperial vessel collided with a massive rock. Rin's patience finally snapped. "Enough of this game," he snarled. "Order all ships to full power. Raise shields to maximum. We will crush them with overwhelming force." "But sir," the power drain. "Do it. Every ship, every system at full capacity. I want that vessel surrounded and destroyed. Now." Throughout the Imperial fleet, standardized protocols activated. Thousands of ships adjusted their power settings simultaneously, their shield harmonics synchronized to the same frequencies as dictated by Imperial doctrine. The Eternal Glory's deck hummed as its own systems powered up to maximum. Purple energy fields sparkled around every ship in the fleet, creating a web of light through the asteroid field. "All ships report ready, Marshal," Admiral Toll announced. "Shield strength at maximum. Weapons charge." Rin allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. "Signal the fleet. Close the net. No more chasing. We will force them to face us." The Imperial ships began moving in perfect formation, their synchronized shields pushing aside asteroids as they advanced. It was a display of power meant to overwhelm and intimidate. "Marshal," a sensor operator called out suddenly. "The human vessel. They're turning to face us." Rin stepped closer to the tactical display. The Phoenix had indeed stopped running. It hung motionless in space, facing the approaching Imperial fleet. "They mean to fight." Rin laughed. "One ship against the might of the Empire. Perhaps humans are more foolish than we thought." But something about this didn't feel right. The Phoenix's actions had been too precise, too calculated. They had led the fleet here deliberately, forced them to power up their shields. "Sir," Admiral Toll's voice carried a note of alarm. Energy spike from the human vessel. Some kind of focused beam weapon. Realization struck Rin too late. Evasive action. All ships break formation. The Phoenix fired. A pulse of energy, almost invisible to the naked eye, shot out from the human ship. It struck the nearest Imperial vessel's shields. And everything went wrong. The pulse somehow resonated with the shield harmonics, creating a feedback loop that jumped from ship to ship through their synchronized energy fields. Like a wave of dominoes falling, shield systems began to overload. "Shut down the shields," Rin roared. But the standardized Imperial protocols worked against them. The automated systems continued trying to maintain shield integrity, pumping more power into the failing systems. On the tactical display, Imperial ships began going dark as their power systems overloaded. The perfect synchronization that had been the fleet's strength became its weakness. "Marshal," Admiral Toll's voice was barely a whisper. "We've lost contact with 30% of the fleet. 40%. 60. Rin stared in horror as his mighty armada began to die. One human ship, one impossible weapon, and his own pride had led them right into the trap. The deck beneath his feet shuddered as the cascade reached the eternal glory. Warning sirens blared as the flagship's systems began to fail. "Emergency power," he ordered. "Shut everything down." But it was too late. The cascade had spread too far, too fast. Ship after ship went dark, their crews frantically evacuating to escape pods as systems failed catastrophically. On the main view screen, the Phoenix hung unchanged against the backdrop of stars and asteroids. A transmission cut through the chaos of failing systems. "Grand Marshal," Captain Kim's voice was calm, almost gentle. "You should order your remaining crews to evacuate. The cascade effect will reach critical levels in approximately 3 minutes." Rin stood frozen, watching his fleet die around him. Everything he had believed about Imperial superiority, about the perfection of standardization, crumbled in the face of human ingenuity. "Abandon ship," he finally ordered, his voice hollow. "All hands to escape pods." As he headed for his own escape pod, Rin took one last look at the tactical display. The mighty Imperial fleet, pride of the Empire, had been defeated by a single human vessel. Perhaps, he thought as the pod launched, they had underestimated these humans after all. Red warning lights flashed across Dr. Yoon's holographic displays as she raced against time in the Phoenix's science lab. Her hands flew over the controls while streams of data scrolled past, showing the complex interactions between the star's magnetic field and the Imperial shields. "The stellar readings are fluctuating again," her assistant called out. "Another pulse coming in 30 seconds. Dr. Yoon pushed her glasses up and studied the wave patterns. They had discovered something extraordinary. The local star's magnetic pulses created tiny distortions in Imperial shield harmonics. Alone, these distortions were insignificant, but combined with their resonance device. "Dr. Yoon," Captain Kim's voice cut through the lab's speakers. "The Imperial fleet is powering up their shields. We need that solution now." "Almost there, Captain," she replied, fingers dancing across the controls. "The star's magnetic field is more complex than we thought. One wrong calculation, and the feedback could tear us apart instead of them." Around her, her science team worked frantically at their stations. They had converted the lab into a makeshift research center, with equipment salvaged from Earth's fallen research stations. Displays covered every wall, showing shield frequencies, magnetic field patterns, and power calculations. "Look at this," Dr. Yoon called to her team, highlighting a particular data stream. "The star's pulses aren't random. They follow a geometric progression. If we time the resonance burst exactly right." The ship shuddered as an Imperial shot grazed their shields. Equipment rattled on the tables, but Dr. Yoon barely noticed. She was lost in the numbers, seeing patterns emerge from the chaos. "Running Simulation 17, announced one of her scientists. A holographic display showed their resonance wave combining with the star's magnetic pulse, then spreading through the Imperial shield network like ripples in a pond. "Still not enough power," Dr. Yoon muttered. "We need something to amplify the effect." She pulled up the Imperial shield specifications they had gathered. The Empire's obsession with perfection meant every ship used identical systems, identical frequencies. It was efficient, but it created a vulnerability. Like a chain of perfectly aligned dominoes, one push could topple them all. "What if," she said slowly, an idea forming, What if we use their own power against them? Her team looked up from their stations. The Imperial ships are powering their shields to maximum, she explained, pulling up new diagrams. All that energy has to go somewhere. If we time our pulse to hit when their shield capacitors are fully charged. Understanding dawned on her assistant's face. The feedback would cascade through their entire network, using their own power to amplify the effect. Dr. Yoon's fingers flew across the controls, adjusting equations and running new simulations. The theory was sound, but they would only get one chance to test it. "Bridge, this is Dr. Yoon," she called. "Captain, I need you to provoke the Imperial fleet. Make them power up their shields to maximum capacity." "That won't be difficult," Captain Kim replied dryly. "They're already angry enough. How long do you need?" Dr. Yoon checked her calculations. 4 minutes to synchronize with the star's next major pulse. After that, well, we'll find out if I'm right. The ship rocked again as more Imperial fire found its mark. Through the lab's small viewport, Dr. Yoon could see the enemy fleet spreading out to surround them, their purple shield barriers glowing bright against the darkness of space. "Configuring resonance device," her assistant reported. "Power levels at 90% and climbing." Dr. Yoon moved to the device's control station. They had modified it extensively over the past hours, adding components to handle the massive energy they would need to channel. It looked cobbled together, a mix of human and salvaged Imperial technology. But it was humanity's last hope. "Star's magnetic field is intensifying," called another scientist. "Major pulse in 3 minutes." Dr. Yoon took a deep breath, studying the readings. Everything had to be perfect. The resonance pulse had to hit at exactly the right moment, with exactly the right frequency, or it would fail. And they wouldn't get a second chance. 2 minutes to pulse. She could see the Imperial ships on the tactical display, their shields blazing at full power. Captain Kim had done her job well, provoking them into committing their full strength. "Power levels at maximum," her assistant reported. "Resonance device is ready." Dr. Yoon entered the final calculations, her hand steady despite the pressure. She had spent her career studying energy wave interactions, but never for something like this. The theories she had developed in peaceful laboratories were about to be tested in battle. 1 minute to pulse. The lab fell silent except for the hum of equipment and the distant rumble of the ship's engines. Dr. Yoon watched the countdown, her finger hovering over the activation control. 30 seconds. She thought of Earth, of the billions lost when the Empire attacked, of all the knowledge and culture destroyed by their quest for perfect order. 10 seconds. The star's magnetic field peaked, its energy washing over both fleets in an invisible wave. Now, Dr. Yoon activated the device. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the readings on her display began to spike. The resonance pulse shot out from the Phoenix, invisible but powerful, carrying the combined force of human ingenuity and stellar magnetism. It struck the nearest Imperial ship's shields. The feedback began instantly, jumping from ship to ship through their synchronized network. Purple barriers flickered and failed as the cascade spread. "It's working," someone shouted. Dr. Yoon watched in amazement as her theories came to life. The Empire's perfect standardization had become their downfall, allowing the feedback to spread unchecked through their entire fleet. She had done it. They had all done it. With science and determination, they had found a way to defeat an overwhelming force. The future was about to change. You'll continue in Part 6 of 7. The bridge of the Phoenix fell silent as thousands of Imperial warships closed in around them. Captain Kim stood at the center of her command deck, watching the enemy vessels form a perfect sphere of destruction around her ship. The Empire's precision, even in this moment, was both beautiful and terrifying. "All weapons locked on us," Commander Park reported quietly. "They're waiting for Grand Marshal Rin's command to fire." Jaya nodded, her expression calm despite the death that surrounded them. "Status of the resonance device." "Dr. Yoon reports ready," Park answered. "Engineering confirms power levels are stable. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Through the main viewport, Imperial ships blotted out the stars. Their purple shield barriers created a web of light, connecting each vessel to its neighbors in a deadly network. The Empire's mighty fleet, brought together by their own arrogance. Last transmission from Grand Marshal Rin, communications announced. He's offering us one final chance to surrender. Jaya almost smiled. Even now, the Empire clung to its traditions. Send no reply. Let's show them how humans answer threats. She opened a channel to the science lab. Dr. Yoon, are you certain about the timing? As certain as I can be, Captain, the scientist replied. The star's magnetic pulse will peak in 30 seconds. That's our window. Jaya looked around her bridge. Young faces stared back at her, tired but determined. They had been running for months, but now they would stand and fight. All hands, she called over the ship-wide comm. This is the captain. In 20 seconds, we execute our final plan. If we succeed, we show the galaxy that humanity cannot be conquered. If we fail, she paused. It has been an honor serving with each of you. The seconds ticked down. On the tactical display, Imperial ships tightened their formation, their weapons charged and ready. 10 seconds to magnetic pulse, Dr. Yoon announced. Jaya took her command chair, gripping the armrests. Everything they had worked for came down to this moment. 5 seconds. Resonance device at full power, engineering reported. 3, 2, 1. Execute, Jaya ordered. The Phoenix shuddered as the resonance device activated. A pulse of invisible energy shot out in all directions, precisely tuned to match the star's magnetic field. For one terrible moment, nothing happened. The Imperial fleet hung motionless, their shields glowing bright against the void. Then, like a spark hitting a line of gunpowder, it began. The nearest Imperial ship's shields flickered, the purple barrier distorting as the resonance cascade took hold. The distortion jumped to the next ship through their synchronized network, then the next, spreading faster and faster. It's working, Park shouted. Shield failures reported across the enemy fleet. On the main screen, they watched in awe as the Empire's mighty vessels began to go dark. Their perfect standardization had become their undoing, allowing the cascade to spread unchecked through their entire formation. Reading massive power fluctuations, Tactical reported. Their shield generators are overloading. The first explosions began as overtaxed systems failed catastrophically. Emergency pods launched from dying ships as crews abandoned their posts. Message from Grand Marshal Rin. Communications called out. He's ordering a general retreat. But it was too late. The cascade had spread too far, affecting too many ships. The Imperial fleet's own power was being turned against them, amplifying the effect beyond anything they could control. Radiation exposure increasing in affected ships, science reported. Their hull plating won't hold against the star's output without shields. Jaya watched as the mighty Imperial armada began to crumble. Ships that had seemed invincible moments ago now drifted powerless in space, their crews fleeing in survival pods. Launch rescue operations, she ordered. Target the escape pods first. We may be enemies, but we're not murderers. The Phoenix's tractor beams activated, gathering the scattered survival pods. Around them, the remnants of the Imperial fleet hung dark and lifeless against the stars. Captain, Park said softly, we did it. We actually did it. Jaya nodded, still watching the tactical display. They had gambled everything on this moment, on the theory that the Empire's greatest strength could become its greatest weakness. Send word to all frequencies, she ordered. Tell every human colony, every resistance group, the Empire can be beaten. Today we proved that. The bridge crew worked quickly, spreading the message of hope across the galaxy. The Phoenix had done the impossible, destroying an entire Imperial fleet with a single shot. Message from Grand Marshal Rin's escape pod. Communications reported. He's requesting to come aboard. Jaya considered for a moment. Grant permission. It's time we had a discussion about the future. As her crew coordinated rescue operations, Jaya stared out at the graveyard of Imperial ships. They had won not through superior numbers or firepower, but through innovation and the courage to try the impossible. The Empire had thought humanity would be an easy conquest. Instead, they had learned a costly lesson about underestimating their opponents. The battle was over. The war for humanity's freedom was about to begin. The vast expanse of space around the Phoenix was filled with the silent hulks of Imperial warships. Their once mighty forms now drifted powerless, their purple shield barriers extinguished. Emergency pods dotted the darkness like stars, carrying the surviving crews of the Empire's greatest fleet. Captain Jaya Kim stood in the Phoenix's main hangar bay as Grand Marshal Rin's escape pod was brought aboard. The massive doors closed behind it, atmosphere hissing back into the chamber. When the pod's hatch opened, the Imperial commander emerged with his head held high despite his defeat. "You fought well," Jaya said simply as he approached, flanked by security officers. "Your crews will be treated with respect." Rin studied her for a long moment. "How?" he finally asked. "How did one ship destroy an entire fleet?" "We used your greatest strength against you," she replied. "Your perfect standardization became your weakness. Sometimes the most powerful force isn't a weapon, but an idea." The Phoenix's halls were crowded with rescued Imperial crew members. They watched in silence as their commander was escorted to temporary quarters. Many had never seen a human up close before, had never imagined being saved by their enemies. In the ship's communications center, messages poured in from across the galaxy. News of the battle spread like wildfire through resistance networks and occupied worlds. One human vessel had accomplished the impossible, bringing down the Empire's mightiest fleet. "We're receiving transmissions from other human colonies," Commander Park reported. "They're rising up against Imperial forces. The occupying troops don't know how to respond without orders from the fleet." Jaya nodded. "Send them tactical data from the battle. Show them how we did it. Let every world learn that the Empire isn't invincible." The Phoenix's science team was already preparing detailed analysis of the resonance weapon. Soon, every resistance group would know how to exploit the fatal flaw in Imperial shield technology. The Empire's standardization would become its undoing across the galaxy. In the medical bay, human doctors treated injured Imperial crew members alongside their own people. Many of the aliens were surprised by this kindness, having been taught that humans were savage barbarians. "You could have left us to die," one Imperial officer told Dr. Yoon as she treated his burns. "Why didn't you?" "Because that's not who we are," she replied simply. "Humanity's strength isn't in destruction, but in our ability to show compassion even to our enemies." Word of the Phoenix's victory reached Earth within hours. The Imperial occupation forces, cut off from their fleet and fearing similar attacks, began to withdraw from major cities. Citizens emerged from hiding to reclaim their world. Captain Kim recorded a message that was broadcast across every frequency, in every language. "To all occupied worlds, this is how empires fall. Not through brute force, but through innovation, determination, and the courage to stand against impossible odds. The Phoenix carries humanity's fire, and we're coming to light the way home." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Resistance movements on dozens of worlds launched coordinated attacks against Imperial strongholds. The Empire's rigid command structure, designed for perfect order, collapsed in the face of chaos and rebellion. In the Phoenix's observation lounge, Jaya watched the stars with Grand Marshal Rin. "Your Empire made a mistake," she said quietly. "You thought that perfection meant making everything the same. But true strength comes from diversity, from finding new ways to solve problems." "We believed we were bringing order to chaos," Rin replied. "Instead, we may have brought about our own destruction." "Not destruction," Jaya corrected him. "Change. The galaxy doesn't need an empire. It needs cooperation between different peoples, different ways of thinking." Reports continued to arrive from across known space. Imperial forces were retreating from planet after planet, their perfect order shattered by the example of one human ship. The age of Imperial dominion was ending. The Phoenix's crew worked tirelessly, coordinating with resistance groups and helping to establish new governments on freed worlds. They had become more than just survivors. They were a symbol of hope to oppressed peoples everywhere. In the ship's mess hall, human crew members shared meals with their former enemies, learning about each other's cultures and beliefs. The barriers of fear and hatred began to break down, replaced by understanding. Perhaps, Grand Marshal Rin said as he prepared to depart for the Imperial capital, "It is time for the Empire to learn from those we sought to conquer." Captain Kim's final message to her crew was broadcast throughout the ship. "Remember this day, not because we won a battle, but because we showed the galaxy a better way." The Phoenix rose from Earth's ashes to light a fire of freedom that will never be extinguished. The ship that had carried humanity's last hope had become a beacon of change, proving that even the mightiest empire could fall to the power of innovation and courage. A new dawn was rising across the galaxy, born from the determination of those who dared to challenge the impossible. The age of Imperial dominion was over. The age of cooperation and shared progress was about to begin.